On this week's episode, Moon Knight Rises on Disney Plus. Did Master Chief get a kill-tacular with his first episode? And who made it out big at the Oscars? All this and more as we once again delve into the pop culture cosmos. And we're back with another episode of the Pop Culture Cosmos. This is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, and the Lakers Fast Break. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our shows. And if you can, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. Plus, if you can like, share, subscribe, follow, or do anything that you can to support us right here at the Lakers Fast Break, Game Source, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, Pop Culture Cosmos, popculturecosmos.com, Humanican Media, or everywhere we're at because we're the #1 tabletop RPG streamer on Facebook. Plus, we've got a ton of videos, interviews, games, everything that we do, including the latest news and trends of pop culture, right there on Facebook at Pop Culture Cosmos. And if you can support all of that, it is sincerely appreciated. But it wouldn't be a Pop Culture Cosmos without our good friend, or without my good friend. Let me try this again. It wouldn't be a Pop Culture Cosmos without my good friend. He's our own Oscar award-winning man of the hour for Pop Culture Cosmos. You got to check out what he's doing today at popculturecosmos.com. He's going to do a lot of things there over there at Humanican Media. You got to go ahead and check out what he does there, including all of his great videos and, of course, his podcast, the Super BS Podcast, and also as well the other great stuff that he has down there. I forgot that. Topicocalypse.
Which is no more anymore.
Which is no more.
It's defunct.
It's defunct. Topicocalypse and the Super BS Gamescast, plus his outstanding book, Congratulations, You Suck, which is available right now at Barnes & Noble and, of course, Amazon as well. It is my good friend. It is Josh Peterson. And the award goes to my good friend, Josh Peterson. What's up, man?
Woo! I want to thank my stylist and my beard guy and, of course, my parents and my good friend, Gerald Glassford. Just the list just goes on and on. This means so much. It's such an honor. Let me give a big speech on my political opinion, and now I will gladly take this award. Thank you. Have a good night.
Clean air, clean earth, peace on earth. There you go. All right,
peace on earth, ending world hunger, all that good stuff.
Yes, there you go, indeed. He's our award-winning play-by-play guy. He is, again, Josh Peterson. Great to have you here, my friend. We're ready for another action-packed, very busy episode, as it always is here at the Pop Culture Cosmos. We got a lot of stuff to talk about that's on tap, including, since it's Oscars, I will be on the show with Melinda Barkhouse, normally our Friday co-host. She is actually sitting in the chair for just a few minutes as we wrap up the Oscars on the back end of the show. She's going to talk about the big winners, who made it out big. We'll cover the big categories, who won what, and we'll talk about whether or not we liked it or didn't like it. That'll come up on the back end of the show. Plus also as well, Dawn Fobbs is here with her March TV update. She's always talking some good things about what she's watching and what she thinks you should check out on television. So she's going to come up here in a bit as well. Plus, Josh and I are going to be talking about the latest thing that's coming up for Disney Plus in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That is Moon Knight. Moon Knight is available. It's coming out this week on the 30th. So we're going to go ahead and preview Moon Knight for you coming up here on the show. Plus also as well, a quick box office report. How well did the movies coming this weekend, including The Lost City, how did that perform? We'll talk about that coming up here in a bit. Plus also as well, we've got some great things, including a video game rundown with Elix 2, Cyberpunk 2077, Tiny Tina's Wonderland, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. That's all coming up here in the bit. And also on the back end of the show, who won, quote unquote, at the Razzies, the anti-Oscars. We'll talk about who was the worst of the worst on this show as well. But first up, my friend, you and I watched it. You and I would love to talk about it. We've been texting back and forth all day long about how we wanted to share our feelings on this, and that is Paramount Plus's latest hit show. Ah, that is Halo, the series that is now the biggest debut ever for Paramount Plus, beating 1883, beating all the Star Trek shows. It is the largest debut ever for a Paramount Plus show. I want to hear your thoughts, my friend. Episode 1. I've got a lot to talk about on it, but I do want to hear your thoughts first on the first episode of Halo.
It helps to unmute your microphone
Yes, it
occasionally
does.
when you
I
want
was
to
going to
talk.
say that.
So let me start out by saying, like, this is only based on one episode, right? Because I don't know where the story's going, and this is a completely different world than the Halo video game. So this opinion could change drastically come next week or the week after.
Mm-hmm.
So just basic thoughts right off the bat here is really cool action sequences. Like, they did not look as cheesy as I thought they would. You know, I kind of thought originally it's going to look like a bunch of cosplay people jumping up and down on things and shooting rifles. I was surprisingly pleased by how well done the action sequences were. um Second thought here, the acting was not the best, but you know, that's probably just because I don't know any of the actors on there, and maybe I'm just not used to like how they act. So seeing, you know, the Master Chief's interactions with the girl that he rescues, it didn't, I don't know, it just didn't feel right, if that makes
Well, how
sense.
did you feel the first time Steve Downes did not talk as far as the voice of Master Chief, because he is not the voice of Master Chief this time around?
So it was, I don't know, that's another thing. It was weird to hear that at first, and then I kind of got used to it. It was when he took his helmet off that it really became difficult for me, because I just did not imagine Master Chief looking like that. I didn't imagine like the semi-shaved mutton chops and the shaved head. I imagined him looking more rugged looking, like a scarred face, and
Because he's been
just,
augmented and all that
yeah,
stuff.
just more, not
Battle scarred.
right, not, yeah, not like chiseled or anything, but just, I don't know, like more of a stony looking face, and those blue eyes that he's become known for, like in the books, like in the way that they describe him. I was expecting that. I was not expecting, what was the guy's name? Pablo Schreiber? Is that who that
Yes.
is? Yeah, I was not expecting him to look like that.
Well, I
And
will.
that
Yeah.
kind of, I don't know, it kind of changed my perception of things. Um, I feel like they had their starting point was not where I imagined the whole series would start. You know, I had a feel they were, this takes place like where the Covenant is. They're trying to convince the outer colonies that the Covenant's real and all that, and they think that the Covenant is just a propaganda tool used by the UNSC. And it's just such a weird starting point, though, because, you know, the book, was it Contact Harvest, I think, is the
Yes.
name of the book, that's about the captain, not captain, the Major Johnson, Sergeant
Yes.
Major Johnson, and that would be a that was a more logical place to start for me.
I agree.
Anyways,
I
it's,
love Avery Johnson as far as the character is concerned. He was
yeah,
just a great part of the Halo universe, and they avoided him completely.
yeah. There's that. So, you know, if I were to just give you my thoughts in a brief couple sentences, I would say the action scenes were cool. Did not really like the story thus far, but I don't know where it's going.
I can give you a couple more sentences on top of that. I thought the special effects were hit and miss. There was
Hmm.
one scene with Master Chief doing a leap onto the top of a vehicle that looked like very stilted. Looks like was moved by the actual individuals in post production. That they moved him physically into it. Just like he was on a harness. It was looked really bad. And then there was some, like I said, some of it was good. The distance shots, the city shots. I thought Reach the fall when it obviously because there's a book coming that's been out, the Fall of Reach. I
Yeah.
thought Reach was something a little bit different. I imagined it to be a little bit different from what I'm read in the Fall of Reach, but that was just
Yeah, and
me.
we've seen it in the video game too, the
Yeah,
Halo Reach, like, it didn't look like that. Like, this, it
yeah.
made it look more like a privileged dystopian society,
Yeah.
like in the Hunger Games.
But I will say this again: to Contact Harvest. Again, I agree with you. Would have been a better place to go and better starting point off of. But they said they were going to distance themselves a little bit from the actual linear history of the game
Mm.
and not follow something verbatim as far as the storyline is concerned. I don't like the fact that they mixed up the insurrectionists, the Covenant, and the humans, the UNSC, all together and put them all in the same storyline. And they had this human infiltrator that is in alignment with the Covenant. I don't understand her role in this. I don't
Yeah.
understand why she's even existing there. I thought that was really poor. Again, mixing all those three elements of the storylines from past Halos, I thought that was really not very well served for all three of the
Mhm.
individual stories that are taking place, because you mixed them all together into one storyline, and it really doesn't help matters much. And then you had this wannabe Mass Effect thing where he finds this Covenant artifact, and all of a sudden he gets those flashbacks of his memories and things of that nature. I was really disappointed by that, because that was really something you borrowed from Mass Effect, in a point where later in the episode you actually referenced Mass Effect with a Commander Shepard reference. If you can hear it about 30 minutes in, is an Easter egg for you. But it's very clear that they were trying to borrow the concept from Mass Effect on that, and I thought that was kind of reaching as well. So overall, I was disappointed with the episode. I think that, to me, is something that it was uh, probably goes on the lower echelon of any type of Halo non-video game entity that I have seen or read
Yeah,
so
yeah, and
far. That's just one episode, though.
right, right, and there's we might be surprised based on where it's going. The whole thing with the relic was confusing because are they gonna go the Forerunner route? Like, I hope they do because there's a lot of interesting mythology there. But in the books, like these kids, like the Spartans, they know where they came from. Like they knew that they were, they knew that they were taken from their parents. Like it was no secret to them. So I'm curious, like why they had to go the whole like brainwash route. Like, oh hey, we can't remember anything. It feels I don't know that storyline feels kind of cheap to me.
Yeah, it just basically, for me, it was a kind of a disappointment. I was really underwhelmed by the whole first episode. But again, it's the first episode. I am going to continue to give it more of a chance. But we want to hear your thoughts on the first episode. So please, we want to hear your thoughts on the first episode. Please let us know. Popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. You can tell us your thoughts on whether you liked it, whether you're looking forward to hearing and seeing the rest of the series coming up. But we want to hear your thoughts on the first episode of Halo, which has done huge numbers on Paramount Plus, which is a very good thing. No matter how bad you think this episode is or this television series is going to pan out, I am ecstatic that it did great numbers for Paramount Plus, because that means there's going to be more video game IPs going to be utilized in different ways in entertainment. So I am very happy about that. So we look forward to hearing your thoughts. Popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. But before we hit the break, my friend, and my conversation with Don Fobbs on our March TV update, wanted to ask you, as far as what's coming up this week. There's no better thing to see on TV than March 30th with Moon Knight. We've been waiting for it now. It's been the 6 weeks of basically stagnant viewing for Disney Plus. Turning Red is the only real entity, and of course the Netflix Marvel shows moving over on Disney Plus. We finally get ourselves some fresh content that I think a lot of people are going to be checking out. Oscar Isaac in the role of Moon Knight, with the different variations of personalities and things of that nature coming into play. Your thoughts on Moon Knight as it heads to Disney Plus on March 30th?
I was bummed because I thought that it came out yesterday. So I wait, no, Friday. I thought it came out Friday. So me and my wife sat down on the couch and we're getting ready to turn it on. Then I realized, like, oh no, it doesn't come out for another week. So we ended up watching Reign of Fire on Amazon Prime. Pretty underrated movie, by the way. But I'm excited about Moon Knight. Like this is the first time that we're seeing this character like really cared about at all. He's kind of always been this really obscure comic book character, and he's briefly in the run of Ultimate Comics. I know he's got a few good stories in the main line of Marvel Comics, but he's someone that people don't really know a whole lot about, despite how interesting his backstory and mythology is. And I've been reading a lot of interviews with him and Ethan Hawke about the show, and just hearing their thoughts on how it's connected, but it's not doesn't rely on the MCU, and he's kind of doing his own thing. It gets me really excited for this show, and I didn't realize that it's only going to be 6 episodes. Is that true? Like I
Yes,
was reading. Okay.
it's only a small series.
Hmm.
Basically, it's initiation for us as the viewers to get used to him because he's going to be on Disney movies going forward. Excuse me, MCU movies going forward.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah, I had no idea that
This
that
is
was
only a get to know you thing. They're going to be
right.
doing this a lot coming up there. They just give you quick series, 6 episode series, just to get you up to date with them, to
Mhm.
so that they can become a better, a part of a larger picture with the MCU in the theaters, in the movies going forward.
Okay, see, that's smart. That's kinda like the one shots that they used to remember the one shots,
Yeah, yep.
the short films they used to do with, like, that's how they introduced what's his name? Phil and,
Well, like with the Nova show, the
right.
Nova the Nova series that was announced as being in production, in development,
Mhm.
that will probably be something like this, where we need to get to know you over 6 episodes so that you could become whoever it is, the a major part of the series of the MCU going forward.
Yeah. Oh, what do you think about the rumors flying around that John Krasinski is gonna be doing playing Mr. Fantastic in
Well,
Doctor
it's
Strange?
the fans have been talking about him being Mr. Fantastic for a long time. Whether or not it's going to be a position just to service the fans once and then you'll never see him again, that to me would be really disappointing.
Yeah.
I hope he would take up the character in a Fantastic Four movie, the Fantastic Four movie that's already been talked about, already been announced, in development, the whole 9 yards. I'm
Mhm.
hoping he'll get to play that role going forward. I'm hoping his wife will play Sue Storm in the
Oh,
movie.
absolutely, that'd be
Yeah, I
awesome.
mean, after turning down the role of Black Widow way back when and letting Scarlett Johansson playing it, it's going forward, she might have some second thoughts. I'm sure she's had some second thoughts over it. She's said that publicly and whatnot, but maybe now that she'll get to play alongside, or maybe the opportunity will come to her that she'll want to go ahead and play Sue Storm, playing opposite her real life husband, and maybe that will work because they've worked together on The Quiet Places. So I
Mhm.
think, yeah, I think this would be a great shot for both of them. But yeah, I just think right now that that would be a great thing, as a great fan service thing. He's a good actor. And everybody and their grandmother have been talking about him as being Mr. Fantastic. So I see him most likely being in that role in some form or fashion. But the thing is, are you going to let him continue playing that role? So we'll see what
Yeah.
happens. That
Yeah.
that's that's
Uh,
that's what I'm worried. Just don't do a one shot like we were
right.
talking about one
How about
shots.
that
Don't
continuity?
Yes, just don't do a one shot with him. Let him be the Mister Fantastic, the main Mister Fantastic. You can have Ian Gruffudd from the original Fantastic Four movies in the earlier part of the century do like a an alternate type deal. And they'll have Michael Chiklis playing the Thing. I know that was suggested on the Lakers Fast Break of all places a couple weeks ago by Joe
Mhm.
Soro, co-host of mine. So yeah, it's funny because we talked about all these variables. That's great if you throw that in there, but please let John Krasinski do the fans a favor. Please let John Krasinski go ahead and become a part of the MCU universe and the MCU in a definitive fashion going forward. But closing up your thoughts on Moon Knight, excited. It's going to be a harder edge, more violent series. It's going to be something with a grittier edge to it, something I know you've been talking about. Now that the parental filters are on for Disney Plus, and they brought over the Netflix shows without editing them, without editing them at all, that's a great sign. So I'm looking forward to a more gruffer, more grittier, more dark show coming up in Moon Knight.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that it's going to be that. You've seen, just judging by the commercials and seeing the way that the actors are portraying these characters, and like you say, with them moving the Netflix shows over, we're going to get it's going to be dark, and I'm kind of excited about that.
Well, I'll tell you what, my friend, I'm looking forward to it as well. It is Moon Knight. It is debuting this week on Disney Plus. It is a get to know you for Moon Knight for many fans out there, or many viewers of Disney Plus, as he will become a major player in the MCU going forward. We want to hear your thoughts on Moon Knight coming this week to Disney Plus. Please let us know. Popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. Well, coming up after the break, it's Don Fobbs with our March TV update right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos. And we're back with the show. It's Gerald Glassford along with my good friend, Mr. Josh Culture Cosmos, aka Josh Peterson. Wanted to ask you real quick, my friend. The box office reports out, and I'll tell you what, I will say that did you think that this the Lost City with Channing Tatum, with Sandra Bullock, and a co-starring role and a guest role for Brad Pitt had Daniel Radcliffe in it? Do you think that kind of star power was going to do well enough to earn over $30 million at the U.S. box office?
I mean, it was a possibility. I just didn't think that the movie itself was going to be good enough to do that. Is this like a parody? Is it supposed to be serious? Like, what's the
It's no, it's
story
supposed
here?
it's not going to be a parody per se, but think of it like Romancing the Stone Romancing the Stone, but a little bit goofier.
All
I
right.
think it has those kind of vibes, but it is goofier than it is supposed to be a comedy, but it's supposed to be set. I don't want to say serious type of thing, but it is not supposed to be a lampoon or a spoof, something like that. But it is supposed to
Okay.
be very, very comedic in nature as far as a romantic comedy is concerned. But yeah, there's heavy
Yeah.
emphasis on the silly on it with Daniel Radcliffe playing the evil bad guy. And of course, you have Channing Tatum being goofy Channing Tatum throughout, and Sandra Bullock being goofy Sandra Bullock, and then Brad Pitt coming in to steal the scenes in his cameo. So I love the scene that you see in the commercial with her meeting Brad Pitt for the first time. You're so handsome, and then he says, "Yeah, my dad's a weatherman." So I thought that was good. But again, The Lost City is doing okay in a box office that I think was trending this week as far as more towards the ladies, which is awesome because this is, I think, from what Hollywood and the entertainment sites are saying, is that this is the first really female centric movie to really garner a wide following in its first week. After the pandemic and things of that nature, coming out of the pandemic, this is the real first movie that was really designed for and really geared towards women in a romantic comedy type setup to really earn that kind of money. So, The Lost City earning over 30 million at the U.S. box office. But the movie I want to ask you real quick again, this is a big shout out to frequent guest Himanish Goel. RRR, a movie we talked about on two occasions on our Facebook chats with Himanish Goel, and actually something we mentioned last month on the show. I'll tell you what, this movie actually kind of surprised. It's the biggest opening ever for an Indian movie at $9.5 million US. Mind you, that's not going to mean a whole lot as far as it breaking the bank and becoming a box office legend. It has earned a lot of money in India, but for a movie like this to connect, I think it says something that there is a audience out there that wants to see entertainment from other parts of the world. After we saw with the Squid Game, with Money Heist on Netflix, both of those have done just amazing numbers. I think there is a future for where people will go ahead and accept and enjoy movies from other areas quite often.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've seen you're talking about the movies from Korea, South Korea, and you
Yes.
were looking at a lot of movies that have come out of Japan, right? Rurouni Kenshin, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or China, sorry. But Japan puts out a lot of good stuff too in the anime adaptations, and yeah, and obviously the Chinese films with the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Ip Man, Legend of the Fist, things like that. There's a market for it, definitely. I mean, there are people who want to watch those types of movies. That's myself included, and so why not? What else is out there? We saw with the Ong Bak, the Thai warrior, like that. Thai culture is was fascinating to watch that. So why not? Why would we not be interested in watching something come out of? Um, I'm sorry, I'm going to sound real ignorant. It's India, right? Is where
Yes.
yeah. So why would we not want to watch films come out of there? Like I feel like there's a lot of talent. You look at all the Bollywood stuff. There's a lot of talent coming out of there. So what else can they do? And from the looks of it, it sounds like this was something that really showed that, hey, we can make films that stand with the rest of the world. And it is something I'm very interested in watching.
Well, I'll tell you what, it is something that I think is a good sign. I know Himanish Goel was absolutely pleased to hear about how well it did at the box office. It's funny because the movie that was the surprise last weekend in in Jujutsu Kaisen Zero, the movie, that movie dropped 75%. So we know with anime movies now, it is very front loaded. They'll show up for the first week, no problem, and show up in big numbers. But Hollywood understands now that when it produces those Funimation anime movies, that it's going to be very front loaded in its audience. So they have to be prepared for that. But great sign to see other movies outside of the big budgeted movies get acclaim, get notice, and get dollars. But we want to hear your thoughts on this weekend's box office. Did you go check out The Lost City? Please let us know. Popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. My friend, before we go ahead and hit the break and our conversation on who won the Oz, on who am I sorry, before we hit the break and my conversation with Melinda Barkhouse on who won the Oscars, we've got a video game update for you. So we're going to be talking about Tiny Tina's Wonderland, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Cyberpunk 2077, and Elix 2. Elix 2, a game by THQ Nordic, a company that I've really had some issues with because they produce all these games, most of them mediocre, most of them underperforming and underwhelming, but they have the resources. They buy out developers all the time. You hear the stories where they have enough money that they generate over the course of the year to go ahead and be a somewhat successful publisher. They need to get their act together and build a one project that they can all team up on, because if they did so, they have enough resources to pull out a pretty good game. Unfortunately, Elix 2 doesn't sound like it was all the way in.
So Elex 2 it's an incredibly frustrating game, and it's not in the I mean, it is in the fact that the gameplay and everything about it's frustrating, but it's also frustrating because it has like conceptually it's an amazing game. You know, in concept. You look at what they were trying to do and you look at what they did, and there's definitely a big gap between what was on the drawing board versus what happened, you know, what came out, what the product looked like. I started this game and I was not expecting much from it, just from the bad publicity that it had gotten thus far. And yeah, you start out looking at this like, you know, you're the main character from the last game, and they kind of uh, shove this whole story on you, and you know they don't really like. They just kind of say like, "Hey, this happened, and now you got to deal with this." Like that's is pretty straightforward, but just it feels like narratively there's a better way they could have handled that. Anyways, the world itself is beautiful. Like I do want to explore. Like I find myself still going back to this game. I'm probably about 6 hours in, and I keep going back because I want to know more about this world. And what I've seen so far is it's fascinating, but there it comes down to these bigger issues that make it not worth it to explore, right? Like the dialogue is horrible, the character interaction horrible, the voice acting horrible, like the way that the way that you level up in order to use equipment is just it's really just not good, you know. So there's so much about it that I want to like but I can't, and there's so much about it that I want to just keep thinking to myself like if I just get am able to look past all this could end up being a pretty decent game. And it for the most part it can be a decent game, but there's just I don't know what happened. It's frustrating because this had so much potential to be a good game, and I don't mean that in the way that I meant, you know, that we said talked about Biomutant, where like Biomutant could have been a decent game if it just had this, and this. Like this game truly had the potential. Oh, you're muted. I can't hear you.
But that's also THQ Nordic, and that's
Right.
the thing. We're seeing this trend of coulda, woulda, shoulda with them. The thing is, I think that they have all these developers, and then of course they do the MX versus ATV stuff that they do, and all these other games
Which
that
are
they
not
have.
bad games, you know?
No,
Like
they're
they're
not bad games,
yeah.
but the problem is they could pool their resources together and really make something spectacular. But the problem is they choose not to do so. They put out, I don't want to say like we talked about last week with shovelware and like the
Mhm.
Wii, what we saw in that period of time, and even at heights of what we saw with the PS4 and the Xbox One, where people were putting out junk games. They put out mediocre games, but they're They're very content. It seems to me like this company is very content on putting that
Well,
out there.
they keep reading, like, obviously they see the reviews on what they're putting out and they look at the feedback, and a lot of the feedback is genuinely helpful. You know, if you're able to take constructive criticism, and they have so many recipes for great games, they just don't ever improve upon them. They're just like, well, let me just keep putting the same thing out over and over. Somebody will play it, and I don't know who's playing it, but it's so frustrating because this game, Elex 2, like, it just, the concept is so cool. This big open world, this mixture of the post-apocalyptic medieval style combat in a world like that. It just, I'm so fascinated by it, but I'm so frustrated by the fact that it's so bad. You
Yeah.
know, like, I want to keep playing it, but I don't think I feel like at this point it's just going to be punishing myself to do this, because the stuff that make is just going to be a cast a shadow over the entire experience of this, what could be a really great game.
I want to hear your thoughts now on Cyberpunk 2077, the next gen upgrade, which you've had a chance to test out. Is someone like me who didn't get into the rush initially of the 10 million people who pre ordered it and soon regretted it because of all the problems? And I know that CD Projekt Red has been working on it over time and trying to produce out the game that they should have produced out in the first time, and the first time around. Now they finally have a game that people are saying that could be worth investing. I want to hear your thoughts on this. Now that you've had some time with the next gen upgrade, is Cyberpunk 2077 now a world worth investigating?
Oh, I think so. I mean, it still freezes here and there, but that, I'm assuming, is just because of my, whether it's my internet or my Xbox console itself. It doesn't, there's nothing like that serves as a detriment to it. So
Mm-hmm.
that being said, like, I'm not seeing a lot of the glitches and issues and missions freezing and not being able to turn quests in, and uh, a lot of walking on the streets and just seeing people without faces, or uh, what do you call it, the pixelized faces. Like, I'm not
Yes.
seeing a lot of that stuff. Like, that stuff all feels and looks a lot better. Playing it in 4K with the what do you call it, the and ray tracing, like, seeing all that stuff at work, like, it does a lot better. Uh, it's unfortunately for this game, which, yeah, I would definitely recommend you play it. It's a really long game, so I mean, you just got to ask yourself, is it worth it to invest so many hours into a game from 2020 when there's so many great things out now? But this game, it just has the unfortunate circumstance of being, will forever be tied to these bad reviews that came out, all the commenting about it. So I have a feeling that anyone who plays it from this point forward, even if they are on the next gen upgrade, are still going to be looking for issues to blog about, to talk about, to make videos about, to chat about on podcasts or whatever. It's just unfortunate that it's always going to be the reputation of this game will always be tied to that, when it's actually a pretty great game. And had this version come out when the game was first released, I think that we would be seeing a completely different, I don't know, a completely different opinion of this game.
Last thing I want to touch on is the two releases from late last week: Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and also Tiny Tina's Wonderland. A land theme going on there. Your thoughts on this? Kirby and the Forgotten Land, which is one of the most recent releases to the Nintendo Switch, something that desperately needs more content coming to it, even though it has sold so many units, over 100 million units. I get it and all that, but the sparse amount of content that happens at times for the Nintendo Switch still is an issue for me. This is something that has garnered positive reviews. What are your thoughts on Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and also Tiny Tina's Wonderland, which is now available on all the general consoles, which is getting solid reviews as well?
So Kirby and the Forgotten Land, I've been monitoring this one closely. Like, I know Brian from Super BS picked it up, but he hasn't played it yet. He played the demo. I've been watching footage of this game online. It reminds me of, early Nintendo 64 3D outings, with a little hint of platforming in there. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Super Mario 64, but as I'm watching this and I'm watching more gameplay, my concern with going out and spending $60 on something like this is the fact that it feels and it looks and not looks, but the gameplay feels an awful lot like Yoshi World games, like Yoshi's Crafted Yarn or whatever, where the game is fun up until a point and then it just becomes repetitive because towards it's geared towards younger audiences. And knowing that it has to be something that will keep them that will not be too difficult for them to play. And I'm looking at Kirby's Forgotten Land, and yeah, I mean, it's something that looks cool, but I don't think it's something that I would pay $60 to play just because it doesn't have that wow factor for me.
Now let's go into Tiny Tina's Wonderland. The familiarity that people have with the world of Borderlands, and it's obviously the series has garnered great success. If this game does not do well, even though the reviews for it are pretty solid right now, if this game does not do well, could people be tiring of the Borderlands concept, the Borderlands gameplay, the Borderlands style of gaming from 2K?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I know a lot of people like Borderlands 3. To me, Borderlands 2 is like the top of the shelf for them because playing Borderlands 3, it's really geared towards people who are good with understanding skill trees and how they work and how to have the best builds. And Borderlands 3, you could get away with playing it with a rudimentary knowledge of these concepts, but it wasn't very user friendly. So I'm looking at Tiny Tina's Wonderland. It's getting, yeah, like you said, it's getting great reviews. I've seen it get 8.5s to 9s. I think Game Informer gave it a 9.5. I could be wrong there, but it's what I'm hearing is it's amazing. Like, it's great because it's based on Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep, which is that the famous Borderlands 2 expansion. People are enjoying it because of the characters and the writing and the voice acting, which I think some of it's done by Andy Samberg and a couple other famous people. So I don't know, man. Like, I'm excited to play it. I'd like to play it. I'm a big Borderlands fan, but as we saw with Borderlands 3, the price cut from $60 to about $30 within 3 or 4 weeks of it coming out, despite how well people enjoyed it. So, I'm curious now, like, is it worth $70 to go out and buy, or should I just kind of wait? Because I'm sure when Target has their Memorial Day sales or whatever, it's going to end up being $30 or $40.
Well, I'll say this, my friend. Again, if this game is scoring well, good reviews, solid reviews all around. IGN gave it an 8. I think at this point in time that it is something that if you're interested in Borderlands and the Borderlands type of theme, if you've played the other Borderlands, obviously something very easy to get into. If it's something you're tiring of, we'll find out. Because with Elden Ring, I was talking to people the other day. You've spoken about how much you played Elden Ring. Somebody was saying, I can't get into other games. I have no time for other games because I've played 100 hours of Elden Ring. So if people are not able to go ahead and get into this, could this be a sign for 2K that we maybe need to slow down on Borderlands and Borderlands related releases? We'll find out. I'm hoping not, because it's always been a good formula. It's been fun writing. The
Mhm.
writing seems to be a key for
Oh,
this.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So that seems to be a key for this series. But again, we'll wait and see. But we want to hear thoughts on Elix 2, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Tiny Tina's Wonderland, and the next gen upgrade for Cyberpunk 2077. Please, if you have any thoughts on any of these games, or if you have more questions for us, please share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. And we'll also be releasing in the not too distant future some footage of Cyberpunk 2077, the next gen upgrade, and also Elix 2. I'm hoping we'll get some footage from Josh as well coming up here in a bit. So we'll wait and see. But again, if you have any thoughts on any of these games, please let us know. Popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. When we return, we're going to close out the show with Melinda Barkhouse and I. Melinda Barkhouse Ross and I. We're going to be talking the Oscars. Who won at the Oscars? We're going to give you a recap of the big winners at the Oscars coming up after the break. And we'll close out the show with the real movie awards, the Razzies. Who won, quote unquote, at the Razzies? We'll talk about that as Josh and I close out the show. This is the Pop Culture Cosmos. And we're back to close out the show. It's the Pop Culture Cosmos. Want to thank so much Don Fobbs for stopping by for a March TV update and Melinda Barkhouse Ross for stopping by with an update on the Oscars. Before we head out, my friend, the anti-Oscars. The anti-Oscars was also presented this past weekend, and that was the Razzies, the Raspberry Awards, as they used to call them now, just the Razzies for the worst of the worst in movies for 2021. And the big winners, my friend, the biggest winner of them all, quote unquote, is Diana the Musical, the Netflix version, which won, quote unquote, 5 Razzies this year at the Razzies. Also coming with also gaining a lot of victories at the Razzies was LeBron James and Space Jam: A New Legacy, which won 3 Razzies. As also as well, I want to mention that Jared Leto, who was in the House of Gucci in a performance I liked and was also under strong consideration for an Oscar, was the victor for the worst supporting actor, which I heavily disagree with. I thought the part was well written. There were some great lines by Jared Leto. I think more people had the issue with his prosthetics, with the 20 pounds prosthetics or thereabouts that was he was wearing while doing the role. I think everybody was thinking more about the look than his actual performance. But your thoughts on this? The best award category is worst performance by Bruce Willis in a 2021 movie, and they had actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
All of them.
8. Yeah,
All
eight,
the
eight
movies.
movies. Yeah, 8 movies debuted with Bruce Willis in it during 2021. And
Surprised there's not any Nicolas Cage stuff in here.
well, that was Nicolas Cage probably during his VOD days, 2019, 2018, even 2020. He had some really bad stinkers, and he actually talked about it last week in an interview about how he had to do that because he was so much in debt. But he said he didn't phone it in, even though it was basically a lot of hit and miss. But now he's doing better roles now. In fact, there's some good stuff coming him going forward. But I love the fact that Bruce Willis had his own category. But your thoughts on the Razzies before we head on out?
I'm, LeBron James definitely worthy of the Razzie that he got.
He was
Space
not good.
Jam was a pretty terrible movie. I haven't really seen a lot by Bruce Willis lately, and it is funny that they
There's a
gave him his
reason
own
why.
category. I'm sure, and I'm sure that it's meant to be endearing. But looking at the rest of this, it's a lot of movies that I haven't seen, so
No,
it's
I
hard
don't
for me
think it's
to say, like,
endearing, my friend. He puts out a lot of junk. If you've seen what
he
Bruce Willis
does
does,
a lot of VOD stuff, yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's the only ones I've heard of are Space Jam, and I think that's just about it. But
Yeah,
Jared Lee. It's funny to see the Ridley Scott films on there. With Jared Leto and House of Gucci, and
yeah.
who the Last Duel, I think, is also Jared Leto was nominated for that one.
No, that was Adam. That was Ben Affleck.
Like,
Ben
yeah,
Affleck, yeah, The Last Duel. These movies from Ridley Scott really not given any love. So
yeah. It's funny because I keep thinking and considering watching both of those, and I just keep hearing about how much of a waste of time they are. So I just
I
kind
thought
of
House of Gucci was okay. Again, I like Jared Leto in it, but it was a lot of over the topness. I will give it
yeah.
that. I thought it was okay. The Last Duel, no, I'm sorry.
No,
I
don't
watched
waste your
that
time.
movie. Yeah, it's not worth. Don't waste your time
All
on
right,
that.
all right.
Your opinion of Ridley Scott will differ after you see that
See,
movie.
I don't want that because I like him.
Yes, well, there you go, my friend. But yeah, I know that with the Space Jam: A New Legacy, we had talked about it last year that the animation I thought was stupendous, but unfortunately, outside of Don Cheadle, everything else fell flat. So I'm
Yeah.
not surprised to see it getting the hate that it did, or the love, I should say, from the Razzies. But if you have thoughts on the Razzies and the worst of the worst of 2021, or you have another movie that you thought was really the worst of the worst in 2021, in fact, actually, we thought I really don't think they put everything on there. I think that some of the stuff that I thought The Matrix was really
Oh my
bad,
gosh,
and
yeah.
we talked about last year the movie with Chris Pratt. As far as that's concerned, that was really that just oh, that was really just bad. That was really bad. The Tomorrow War was really just awful. A new layer of awful. That should have won the Razzie because
But
the
they're
Tomorrow War
making a
was awful.
sequel,
Of
so
course,
obviously somebody watched it.
a lot of people watched it. That's the problem. But Oh well. What are your thoughts out there on the Razzies? Please share us your thoughts. Popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. Well, my friend, we made it through another episode. Very busy week indeed. Again, Moon Knight's coming up. A lot of things. Morbius is coming up on the back end of the show, and Melinda Barkhouse Ross and I will be covering that on the Friday show. But any last thoughts on the way out?
No, I mean, we'll keep you posted about Halo, but I'd be curious to know everyone else's thoughts on Halo out there. Send us an email, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. We'll read those emails on the air, address it, and we'll address it in light of episode 2 on next week's show. So send them on down.
Oh, yeah, I hope it gets better, my friend. For us, I hope it gets better indeed. So for Josh Culture Cosmos, aka Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise right here in the Pop Culture Cosmos. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great